Hi everyone, my name is Bella Laren, and this is my applied assignment for SPE223. So to kind of go over what I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to talk about my pre-work, my topic, why I picked it, my prior knowledge, and then my course materials and my research. I'll be showing my research and the new learning that I've discovered and connecting that to my sources, as well as a continued inquiry. So here's my pre-work. My topic was young students with disabilities in special education and general education. Uh, why I chose this topic is because I am planning on becoming an educator, specifically in the public school system, elementary, and I wanted to discuss the inclusion of students in the school system since that is where I'm going to be, and I thought this would be a great way to kind of better my knowledge to better support disabled students in the future. The aspect of inclusion I'm going to be talking about is our students, the community within schools, and educators and the support they have and how they support students. The two people I decided to interview are Denise Collins and Chelsea Fajardo. Why I picked these two people is Denise has her degree in education, and she specifically worked as a special education teacher, having her own classroom. Prior to that, she was a teacher's aide in special education. So she had a few years in that. And we kind of talk about she did end up burning out, so she no longer works in special education, but she has a lot of opinions about the disabled students and the education that they have accessible to them today. And then Chelsea Fajardo is currently a paraprofessional in the public school system, and she specifically helps disabled children and has a specific case study that she follows along and has talked about that progress with me in the interview. As far as course materials, I picked People with Invisible Disabilities Fight for Understanding, Integrating Special Education and General Education, and Individuals with Disabilities Education Act 40 years later. For my first course material, I picked that one as it shines a light on students who are in general education but need extra help, as well as students who have disabilities that aren't exactly seen and kind of the struggles that they have to go through in order to have their inclusive, equitable education. For integrating special education, general education, it really helped me provide 2 points of views as far as a student that wants to actively be placed in more general education classes, and another student that prefers having that extra support and help in their special education classes. And then I chose the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act video because I felt that provided great background on the history of accessible education for disabled students and what we are looking at today in the current climate for disabled students. And the research that I did, I had four sources that I picked from. I picked a case study, which is the first one here, extension of a systematic database reinforcement system. This, in summary, provided a case study on the usefulness of paraprofessionals for disabled students, the success that came along with, kind of showing that some disabled students in general education, with a little extra support of having someone by their side, they can show great development in their education. A blueprint for community inclusion strategies for youth with developmental disabilities. This article really provided a standard definition of what it means to have an actual special education, like meaningful special education for these students, and provided solutions into how we can create better laws for a more inclusive education for disabled students. Then I have the illusion of inclusion for children with invisible disabilities, and this resource really covers how the act of integrating students themselves into general education is not enough. A lot of parents feel that when their disabled students are placed into these general education classes, they are more babysat rather than truly taught and growing their development. They feel they have separate activities. They're really just placed in the class, and even though they're integrated, they are still segregated. Then I have pre-K special education inclusion practices. This kind of really reiterated the problem that we have in our public school systems, that our educators, our administrators, a lot of them are ill-equipped when it comes to supporting our disabled students, and kind of the work that needs to be done in order to make those changes. As far as evidence, going over my interview with Denise, an important takeaway was that although she sees the benefits of integrating completely into general education, it is not safe and it is not for every disabled student. So, although great opportunity for growth and social behavior, sometimes academically it is not the best because they need specialized education. That's what their IEPs are for. But she does believe that there needs to be more time allotted for integration with gen education. As for her and actually Chelsea as well, that I'll bring up, their students are only required 30 minutes a day to be integrated, and that's most of the time in physical education. And she feels that there is plenty of opportunity to add more integration in that way. With Chelsea's interview, my key takeaways is that general education is beneficial if everyone is involved and is engaged. The common problem that I had seen from both Denise and Chelsea was the lack of support from their administrators, their principals, and the districts. Denise even said herself that her principal actively wanted nothing to do with her and her disabled students, felt that they were in the way, and Chelsea explained herself that being in gen education with her disabled student, the lead teacher in the general education class really did little to nothing to include her disabled student. And although Chelsea actively tried to include abled students in interacting with her disabled student, it oftentimes failed. And at that point, her disabled student fully went into special education and was taken out of the general education classes. The new learning that I discovered and kind of tying into my evidence and my sources is that I learned that students with disabilities are often not included outside of their classroom. Even if placed into general education classes, they are oftentimes more excluded. And this really fits into the PBS News report that although it helps socializing the two groups with one another academically, it is not always beneficial. And I tied this really into the illusion of inclusion for children with invisible disabilities. With this article, it really brought out that administrators and teachers and general educators really have to do more and step up in educating themselves in order to better support every student that walks through the door, and that includes disabled students. As far as equity, being able to provide these students with the support that they need to succeed in their general education classes, if that is the case, and I brought up the case study with the paraprofessional, and how having that person tied to the disabled student really helped the student keep up, find activities to learn the same things that the general education students were learning. And as Chelsea said, although in her case it was not beneficial for her student in their environment, she does still believe that with other students, it is possible to have a successful integration in general education. And then for access, once again, schools, districts, and policymakers have a lot to work to do in order to make education safe, meaningful, and inclusive for disabled students. And I really tied that away with my interview with Denise and Chelsea. Both of these interviews were really insightful. And they both said prior to working with disabled students, they really didn't have an opinion about them because growing up, they weren't really exposed to disabled students. But hearing how they began working with disabled students firsthand is when they began to learn a lot. That's how I felt when I interviewed them. Going through my research, I learned a lot about how the type of support these student needs, what they're lacking. I feel like I learned a lot from just speaking with Denise and Chelsea. A continued inquiry is how to include disabled students in school-wide goals so they aren't left out, meaning how can we give these disabled students a voice to advocate for themselves? How can we together, including with them, go to our representatives in order to make laws to have that meaningful education set in place to be truly inclusive? So I want to enhance and understand how schools develop academic goals and their goals as principals for their schools, and how we can include disabled students as a part of that. So the question that I have is that, do you still think that we should actively place disabled students in general education, or do you see how that does not fit for some students and can fit for others? Or do you think that we should reach that goal where every single student can sit in a classroom and the education will be inclusive for all of them? Thank you. That is my applied assignment. And here are the references that I used for this assignment. Thank you.